Oh my God.
Okay.
We're completely out of control today. I'm Elizabeth Vincentielli, and I write theater reviews and features for the New York Times.
And I'm Peter Marks, former theater critic, current Tony nominator, and always Elizabeth's faithful co-host. Welcome to another edition of Marks and Vincentielli, the podcast that's all the rage about the stage.
Whoa, okay. Okay, you're off. That's a quick start. Rage. I mean, that's better than raging as a machine. Rage against it. That's definitely the nerd version of
Exactly.
of a metal band. Well, yes. Tell me, Peter, what's on the agenda today?
I'm so glad you asked, Elizabeth. So today, we're going to talk to the stars of a Broadway musical that has a tender heart and hard drive. I'm talking about Maybe Happy Ending and its lead actors, Darren Criss and Helen J. Shen.
So Darren and Helen play humanoid robotic servants, HelperBots. And they've been taken out of service and they're living out their days in adjacent apartments in a HelperBot retirement community in Seoul, South Korea. So I think from this right there, you can tell this is not your regular musical, Broadway or otherwise. So it's your classic boybot beats girlbot love story. And I'm going to say it right there. I cried at this show like I have not cried. So I'm a crier at
What a
shows.
softie.
I really tear. I'm a soft touch for some things. But that one, I was such a mess at the end. And the reviews have been, I would say, ecstatic for this show. It's probably one of the best reviewed shows of the new season. The music is by Will Aronson and books and lyrics by Aronson and Hue Park. And it's beautifully directed by Michael Arden, possibly his finest job that I've seen. It's the directing. It really makes you realize how hack of a job so many other directors do, because this one really makes you think, this is possible. It's possible to really think through the direction of a show. So just a little bit quickly before we get on to the interview, but this is Darren's fourth Broadway show after How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying. Hedwig and the Angry Inch, he was a replacement in both. And then he was in David Mamet's American Buffalo. So wide range.
Oh, I forgot that.
It's Helen's Broadway debut. And I had liked her a lot in an off-Broadway show at MCC called The Lonely Few. And she was also in the ensemble of Teeth, the Michael R. Jackson show at Playwrights Horizons. But she was really a lovely and very different from what she does in Maybe a Happy Ending in The Lonely Few. So it's been great to watch the show, which is at the Belasco. It's one of my favorite Broadway houses, too. It's kind of small, intimate Broadway house. And the show has been finding a really enthusiastic audience. And it's been a crowded season for new musical, but this show is really finding its place, and it's just wonderful to see.
It's yes, and for publicists to know that if Elizabeth is crying, you're in good shape. This is a tell, obviously.
It
about
kind of
Elizabeth.
is. I can't. Yeah, it's just.
I understand, and that's because you're deeply moved, and I love hearing when you have that response. It's so real, so authentic, and of course, I've been curious.
As opposed to the rest of the time.
Well, there are times when you just don't have a strong feeling, and not you, but one doesn't have a strong feeling, and when you do, it's real and it's undeniable. It's and as a critic, those you fall back on those feelings to know that you're in sync with your own reaction to a show.
Oh, yeah, it's true.
And what you're writing about it. And about this show, I have been incredibly curious about the mechanics of this one, how they do it. 4 actors on the stage that hold the stage for so long. And I do think that reviews that describe them as robots is a little bit of a misdirection, because there's nothing mechanical about Oliver, the character Darren plays, or Claire, the one that Helen plays, the 2 HelperBots. They are essentially human adjacent. And we're going to talk to Darren and Helen about how they convey the idea of being people made out of circuitry, but with the emotional range of actual humans.
Yeah, and we're going to ask them about the process of turning the show, which began life as a musical in Seoul, into a resonant American production, and how they basically got to do the show. It's a very small cast. It's basically well, two very big roles and two supporting roles. So there's a lot of pressure on them to bring to life characters that are built in a factory.
Well said. So welcome, Darren, Criss, and Helen Shen. It's great to have you on the podcast. We're thrilled to have you today. Congratulations on Maybe Happy Ending. We're going to just start with the obvious question, which is how did you come to this show? I know it was done originally in Korea. Where did this fall into your lives?
You want to take it?
Okay. Only because you came in shortly after me, Helen. I'll take this. But first, I just want to tell our listeners that the banter right before these guys started recording was second to none. And boy, you guys are really missing out. It was terrific. Anyway, to answer your question, I think I speak for Helen and I and myself and pretty much everybody in the cast, where this felt like it was forged in the sky and just fell into our laps in the most magical kind of dream ways. It's not something that either of us chased, and I guess in the abstract you always hope for something like this, but you could never really imagine it coming together the way that it had for both of us. Before I pass to Helen, I'll just say that I actually just had dinner with him the other night, and I sat him down and
Michael Arden.
Michael Arden, our director. I wasn't fishing. I just said, dude, why me? I was like, why? Like, thank you so much for seeing something that I don't know if I wouldn't have seen. It just wouldn't have occurred to me. And so it's just me thanking him really for including me in this, because this has been such a marvelous, this is a gross understanding, but an extraordinarily giving thing in my life. We can get to that later. But I've just been so overwhelmed with joy and gratitude for this piece that it's just, I around every corner when this was starting, I was like, yeah, but what's the catch? What's the catch? This seems too good to be true. And it has only exponentially gotten more and more gratifying and beautiful and exhilarating. So when it came to me, he asked me to do a reading. I was unavailable. So you'll hear me say this many times, but short story long, it just kept popping up. And just like anything magical in life, it's really all about timing. I couldn't do it in 2019. I couldn't do it in 2020. There was a pandemic, and then there was a strike. And then suddenly cut to 2025. He brought it back up again at the beginning of the year, and he said, yeah, I'm doing it again. It's going to Broadway. And I was like, what do you mean?
Wow.
What's the out of town? He's like, well, we did it out of town. We did it in Atlanta. And I said, okay, well,
oh, right.
Do you have a theater? Yes. Do you have the team? Yep. Do you have the money? Yep. It's all there. And so I never encountered any situation like this where it was kind of like a turnkey production. And also, I'm not in the habit of getting things just sort of like, hey, will you do this? Especially from buddies of mine. Like, Michael's a homie. It just seemed so cosmically beshert that I couldn't believe that it my good fortune. And so I had been on it for a number of weeks after saying, yes, this sounds wonderful. I'd love to do it. It fits perfectly into my life at this moment. And then off we went to the races to find our Claire, which happened very quickly for me, but 5 million times as quick for Helen. And I will pass it off to her, because this was a whirlwind and a half for her. It felt fast for me. I can only imagine what it felt like for her.
I didn't know anything about Maybe Happy Ending until a year ago. And I got a tape, and I sent in a tape, and then I did one callback, which was with Darren. And then the next day I found out that I got the job, which is so rare.
Amazing.
I had been doing other things, and I was, I think, thankfully very busy when this seemingly like golden opportunity popped up, because I didn't have the chance to be nervous about it or kind of doubt anything. I mean, as soon as I got the material and taped for it, I knew that I had an idea of what I would like to do with this character, which is not something that I necessarily can say about a lot of the things that I audition for. A lot of the times it's, hopefully I'm right, but this doesn't feel, I feel like I may be like stretching a little bit in this way or this way, but as soon as I heard the music and read the sides, I was like, I understand this comedy. I understand this personality. I feel like this music sits in a place where, the team, I couldn't control a lot of other things, but I was like, but this is how I would want to sing this music. And so then the fact that it happened the next day was just, it felt like the universe. It felt so cosmic. Yeah, I know it had been kicking around, but and my manager knew about a couple readings before, but yeah, it was just completely, it felt like it fell out of the sky.
Wow.
For sure.
To this day, Peter, there's this sense of, is this like, this is unbelievable. I'm still waiting for the shoe to drop.
Wow.
Because it really is. I've said this a million times on a bunch of different things, to forgive the repetition, but I mean this, and not just for your listeners. I'm saying this to you two specifically. This show, for me personally, is the greatest possible thing that could be happening to me and my family at this juncture in my life. Personally, professionally, emotionally, spiritually, mentally.
Wow.
There is no higher rung on the ladder. None.
That's so nice.
This is it. And like I said, I'm overwhelmed with joy and gratitude. And I get to share it with individuals that I absolutely love. People who are coming, and the people that I work with. It is just it is one of the most remarkable singular things I've ever had the privilege of being part of. And the reasons for that are we don't have enough time for, but
that's lovely.
Because it's not just the story, it's the production, it's what it has to say. It's under 2 hours. It's like, it's just every possible corner of what the criteria of a reason for an artist or an audience to like something. It checks boxes that I didn't even know existed. Wow. It's just the greatest. So I'm just a pig in shit.
So I'm curious as to how much of the characters are on the page and how much came from you. Like, what was on the page and how did you evolve towards what we see? Like, did you have, like, was it pretty much ready, or did you have like rehearsal room?
I will say that we really, in previews, didn't change a lot of written text at all. Because of their out of town in Atlanta, they changed a lot.
And Korea.
Between that and Korea. And like the creators, and specifically with Michael for this American production of it, they ironed out a lot of the book kinks before we got there. But I will say, like, we discovered a lot of, I think, jokes and kind of dynamic things in the room, because it doesn't feel, they were really specific about us feeling like we had ownership of stepping into this role and not feeling like we had to be beholden to anything that came before. If it was helpful, they would give us, hints of what they learned out of town. But for the most part, I felt very much like I had agency over making Claire a little bit more, I don't know, I call it my gremlin side. I added a bunch of things that felt like me, and some bits in there that felt like me, and really just wanted to make it feel as real as possible and make the people in the room laugh and feel the energy of the audience and stuff. And so I think those moments were really lovely. They gave us a lot of agency and a lot of leeway to play vocally, but keep it clean, as robots would sing. So there's less like how maybe Darren and myself would like sing the music as people, but that actually, I think for me, gave me a little bit more, it made me feel more creative in like, how can I still make these vocal choices interesting while also keeping them in the realm of the sonic world.
No, it's interesting that you're saying about like sometimes the limitation being like spurring, because I was just talking to an actor who's in another musical, and he has a couple of songs where he can't move at all. And he said, no, it's actually great not to be able to move, because you really have to sell, you can't resort to like using your hands, or you have to, you only have your voice and the song. And the character.
Limitation. I mean, this is an old sort of adage. I forget what the Greeks would have said, probably far more articulately than me. But, parameters are very helpful. If chaos is the mother of invention, limit is the midwife to economy. You really can kind of it's nice to have, it's I'm the kind of artist that like, give me a year to do something, I'll do it the night before. It's like, you got to give me a deadline. You got to give me a limit to stuff. And that has been extraordinarily helpful for me because, we're not human beings. So there are things that we can't and will not do. Like, there's a scene that we have called Robots Can't Cry. And it's one of the hardest things for me personally, because it's an extraordinarily moving piece. And there are things about it that, are very emotionally cathartic that I would very much, Darren would like to cry because it's just so palpable. The feelings that are rushing through the story. But it is the limitation, the sort of the lid to be put on that pressurizes that experience for the actual humans in the room, which are the audience. And so that limit is the sort of tension that makes the drama interesting. It's the things that we can't do, and the desire for an audience to, the age old thing of like seeing two people together. This is thousands and thousands of years old.
Right.
Yeah.
If I'm using binary constructs here, boy meets girl, we all want them to be together. It's like, it's in our fucking bones. Like, we can't help it. And the more they can't is the more that you want. And that
tension,
sort of positive negative ion, is endlessly dizzying and delicious for audiences, no matter what the context and construct is. It's just always interesting, which is why every culture for hundreds and thousands of years, we've had versions of that.
Sure.
So this is why, again, this is such an ancient story, but nonetheless a new and familiar one. But yes, back to your point, like, there's a lot of things that are limited from what this particular dramaturgical construct is of them being robots, that in the way that she's from, one's from, one's a Montague and one's a Capulet, like that construct limits us with what we can do, but as a result can only do certain things, which is really, really fun for actors.
It's almost it almost doesn't help to describe them as robots, because people have a notion of what robots are, where it's an evolving sense. These are as humanoid as artificial beings could be. And I'm fascinated. I've been going over and over in my mind the ways in which what's going through your minds as you try to figure out who they are. Because for the audience, they're called HelperBots. They're both retired models of HelperBots and they serve essentially as family members in a servile way to human families. And they're living side by side in a retirement community for HelperBots. And one of the most poignant aspects of the show is the shelf life that both of them are conscious of. They're obsolete models, and therefore the parts are no longer being regenerated for their their types. They're conscious of the end of things, and that's a recurrent theme all through the musical. There's a visit to an island of fireflies, and it's the last place on Earth where these fireflies that only live for 2 months. And Claire, Helen's character, says it's only 2 months, but it's a wonderful 2 months, or a glorious 2 months. I love that. I get chills thinking about it.
Me too. Love it.
And I also thought, I went, oh my God, Claire and Oliver haven't had childhoods. They are created as these adults, and that was so profound and so in a way discombobulating for me, in terms of how, what's filled their personalities out, and how they evolved from the point of manufacture. And I wondered, how do you process it yourselves? What do you have to erase from Darren and Helen to be Oliver and Claire?
I'm going to jump in here because you said a couple things that were very interesting to me. I actually would would counterpoint the idea of them not having childhoods, and this could just be semantics here, but you said the word process, and a lot of their processing and programming, I think we wouldn't think of in the typical sense of a human's childhood. But what's fascinating about these HelperBots is that their quote unquote childhood is gleaned from their respective owners. Their owners have inadvertently programmed them with their own sort of experiences and expectations of the world. And so for me, my guiding principle for somebody like Oliver, for those listening that haven't seen the show, his former owner was something of a hermit, this sort of loner guy named James. And so as a result, he has this very isolated sense of happiness, and his expectations and interactions with the world are very specific to the way this one person can enjoy things. The paradigm of which is based on the Japanese phenomenon of the hikikomori, these guys that never leave. They're very socially isolated. They just want to stay in their room. They need one little thing. And so he's a bit of that, which is not too dissimilar from the way that James interacted with the world. He likes his records. He likes his things. His marriage didn't really work out. He really likes to be in his own and have his own little protected world. And this is how Oliver sees the world. So while that's not a typical childhood per se, his Windows 98 is very much from James, as opposed to Claire's iOS fucking 100, which is from a couple, and the way that she perceives love and its sort of pitfalls and the way that it can leave you heartbroken is very much a result of her experience with those people. So their quote unquote childhoods is a learning model based off of what brought them into this world. So I would wager to say they did have a childhood, and I know Helen has a lot to say about
that the piece, we get to see their childhoods because of flashbacks or fantasy flashbacks in Oliver's case with Where You Belong. But with Claire, I feel like the point of factory reset, or the factory setting that she has, there's a naivete, there's openness to learning, and then learning a hard lesson that hardens her. So there, all of the breadcrumbs for that development happen, and I think like their lifetime or timeline, I guess, becomes truncated. So like their 12 years of living on this earth is a human being's 100 years. So by the time we meet them, they're on the outside maybe appearing to be young folks and these humanoid family members, but their experience of how they've lived is at the, they're 80 or 90, so it's interesting to kind of embody a feeling of being at the end of your timeline at the beginning of the show, and then flashing back to being naive and being open and thinking the best of people, even when, that's been my most favorite part to play about Claire is the contrast between when you meet her and then once you learn where her shell comes from. We get to actually see it, which is really interesting. And also really interesting to play against videos to see that.
Well, I was going to ask about that because the staging is so complex. It's one of the best stagings I've seen, one of the best direction of a musical or a play I've seen on Broadway in a long time. It is so incredible. And and is that complexity reflected in, what was the scene choreography like for you? Because it just feels the precisions you have to achieve is really incredible. I mean, musicals in general are very precise. That's kind of part of what it's like, especially on Broadway.
We are at the behest of such geniuses backstage. Our stage management team, our set designers. When we were in rehearsal, our designers were speaking in 4-dimensional terms that made absolutely no sense to us. We could kind of laugh at them and say okay, sure, that sounds awesome, but what is it actually going to be? And then when we got to tech and started to put all of that stuff on on its feet, it kind of, we did have to put a lot of our trust in them to keep us safe, and they did. And these are the units are happening. A lot of the set pieces and like the transitions are happening to us as opposed to us affecting them. So it kind of just feels like this moving playground that we get to move in and out of, and then now focus on more of the scene work because the world changes around us.
Yeah, and one of the great privileges of getting to do something over and over and over again is that, much like, you know, living with somebody for long enough, things start to osmose into each other. And this sort of idea of osmosis exists within the way that everything moves and feels in our show. One of the things that I have the greatest pride about our show in particular is the way that everything feels like everything else. The musical aesthetic feels like the sentiment of the show. The kineticism of these characters feel like the pace at which the pieces move. Everything, the colors and everything feels like part of one cellular organism, and the kind of refinement of how close those things can be to each other has only gotten more and more precise just by sheer repetition. So, for example, for me, when you're in a rehearsal room, the speed at which a set piece moves is now so dialed into how slowly or how quickly I move, because everything needs to feel like each other. There are things when we call it the iris, which is that sort of very cinematic opening and closing of the set. You know, I will never move any faster or slower than the iris itself, because if it did, it would feel disconjointed. You would suddenly be taken out of it. So when you say, how does it affect? It really does inform the literal and figurative pace of storytelling and characterization that is really fun for me. You know, if a set piece doesn't move, I won't move. Like, there are things like that are just such a joy to play with, and it is the fifth character on stage. You know,
I'm curious. You know, one thing that it's one of the many charming things about this show is you're a model 3. Oliver is from the 3 line. Claire is from the 5 line, which leads to one of the funniest lines in the show at the motel. And I won't reveal it because it's just so good. But so in your minds, what's the difference between a 3 and a 5? I can sense that there's a difference because the performances are that subtle. But I want to hear what is in your heads about what does Claire have in hers hard drive that Oliver lacks.
I appreciate you using the word subtle, but I will completely rebut another thing that you've said, because I would say it's anything but. It is the antichrist of subtle. The Model 3 thing for me has been my 2-hour excuse to overact. There is a severe lack of subtlety and nuance. You know, like last time I did a Broadway show, I was doing Mamet. You know, it's everything you don't see. Pinter, Mamet, a lot of these great playwrights, it's all about subtext. For Oliver and for Model 3s in this particular case, everything is completely signaled, transmitted. It's vaudeville, it's kabuki, it's commedia dell'arte, it's Disney animation. You see everything on my face, in my body, at all times. There is everything that's happening in my head. It is happening in some sort of physical manifestation for the balcony to understand if they didn't even speak English.
Are you wearing severe makeup?
Yes, big time. Big time. There is a huge transmitting of one of these things is not like the other. It's my job from the top of the show to go to sort of like, you know, up smack you across the behind the head, being like, this ain't a human being, and here's why. So you can kind of calibrate your dial to this alternate reality, similar to why by the time we meet Helen, and I'll pass it off to her, I have to create this like counterweight to wherever she's going to come in. So for me, I'm trying to be the anti-subtle.
Yeah, but
there has to be this sort of uncanny valley of this is not a person kind of thought.
Yeah, but I think, Darren, you're exaggerating the degree to which these things are evoked. And I think that you've inculcated more of Oliver than your...
Good SAT word.
Thank you.
You should be a journalist.
I went to Yale, Darren, please.
God. Never miss an opportunity.
Yeah. Anyway, yes, thank you.
We went to Michigan, okay?
I know you did. You both did. Didn't you both go to Michigan?
We did.
Yeah.
We did.
But what I was going to say was, I appreciate that that we see the physical differences between these characters, but there's this dark space between the two of you. I don't have. I'm trying like almost like a vacuum of experience that is evident once Claire starts speaking. Mm-hmm. And yes, when you have your first song and you're looking at the things coming through the mail chute and you go, great picture of Ellington, isn't it? I mean, I get it. I'm not trying to No,
I know.
Get it.
Oh, not at all. I was just trying to paint a portrait for the listeners that.
Yes, but I want to know. So, what is it? What's the difference? Is it an emotional vacuity? I mean, what does Claire have that Oliver doesn't?
I think
processing speed, Peter. Processing speed.
Yeah.
Well, that's true of most women, I think, that over men.
I think also like flexibility, or where Oliver is a bit more angular in his ideas, in his movements, in his behavior. Claire has the curvature from A to B.
Beautiful.
So in all of those ways, in emotionally, in the scene work, in how she learns about things and doesn't necessarily, I think, in the ways that there's a scene in what I would call Act 2, I guess, about him learning a little bit more about his actual history. A reveal that happens, and the way that she processes that information as opposed to how Claire processed her maybe main conflict, I guess, or her worst memory, I guess, how she processes her worst memory, that you can kind of see how different they take to things being different than their expectations. And I think that's how it's all really a lot there in the text, which is just a testament to Will and Hue's amazing and thorough world building from the production in Korea. They know so inherently what needs to happen story-wise for the payoff emotionally for the end, and to differentiate these two. So a lot of this, what you're talking about of like this gap and stuff, it's all subtle ways in which they react to their given circumstances. And then to add on to that, I think like playing a robot with their prime directive, it's exciting to then feel like, and it kind of goes back to your actions and your objectives. It becomes a little bit less behavioral with your acting. It becomes more like, what's the goal? What's the journey? And then when that either works or doesn't work, how do you change and how do you, if you can? So I think that is what I would say to that question. I love thinking about it because that was definitely a moment in rehearsal that we had to, I felt like I had to figure out in real time what the differentiation would be while also knowing at the end of the spectrum is a human. So it has to also telegraph non-human while also not being a 3.
I just had a thought now that I've never articulated out loud, but I would like to because Peter and Elizabeth are such smart, cool people that I'm trying desperately to impress them.
One of us went to Yale.
And one of you went to Yale. And one of you is from Corsica.
He will never stop reminding us.
I was going to say, I think if I had to put 10 polls up for Oliver's sort of train of thought, they just exist. Everything exists in extremes, and to Helen's point, sort of angulature, things are very sort of static. Where I just Oliver oscillates between joy and fear. Right, they just kind of go back and forth to varying degrees of both. But those are kind of the main sort of. I talk a lot about positive, negative ions, but that's where he exists in between. And Helen, and Claire's character, Helen's character of Claire. I almost said character, but it's been a day.
Good.
They is filling in all the nuance and the colors in between. I can think about the spaces of where those exist. In this was the visual that I was thinking about. If if you're looking at like a coloring book, just the black and white lines of the things is the way that Oliver thinks of stuff. And Claire is all of the beautiful shades of color in between. So without each other, it's just a bunch of colors with no lines, which would be Claire's sort of world, maybe. I'm positing. I don't know if that's entirely true, but it's an interesting concept. And then Oliver is just the lines, but without any color. So the two of them give each other this dimensionality that is so compelling and fun to see come together when they do. And that's sort of the visual that just struck me, and I'm somewhat proud of it. Call it our Michigan education.
I want to go back a little bit to where you were talking about the pace of the show. This is a show that has a very, very specific pace and this dreamlike quality that is very rare to a very high degree on Broadway, where even when you have a ballad, it tends to be more like a power ballad. There's a kind of strength and force and projection on Broadway, even on quieter shows. But yours is very different. It's like it's a bubble of its own. And
Thank you.
I think it took a little while to find its audience because of that, I think. I mean, the subject but the word of mouth has been amazing. And I'm curious as to was there a moment when you realized this is working? Like, was it like people talking to you afterwards, or, and it's doing well? Like, it's really, I think it's like the best word of mouth of the season. And it's unlike anything else this season or in many seasons. Like, when did you realize, and what did people talk to you about, like, afterwards, or when you sign at the end, or like, I'm just really curious about the reception.
Yeah, that's amazing to hear, first of all, because I feel like I'm like, I don't really know if people are telling me the truth because I'm so close to it. So if they're all very complimentary after the show, but that is also, why would they be anything other than that? That's very rude. You know what I mean? But, I will say in previews, before we had the word of mouth that we had, we did have pin drop audiences in moments of where the story maybe takes a left turn when you thought it would take a right turn. And that to me always signified that we had a listening, absorbing audience. And I think that it's a very rare feeling to feel like you're sitting in a theater and you don't have any idea what you're going to expect. And that was exciting to present. When we knew we had the audience in the palm of our hand was when we're explaining these when we're referencing Model 5, Model 3, and there's a laugh. And we're like, oh, we built the world. We set up the constructs enough that now we have you and you understand. And there's a laugh that I hear every night that always makes me delighted about the world building, which is a reveal of what maybe someone's password might mean. And it happens right at the end, and it always makes me think like, oh, they've bought in so much to the point that some at the beginning of the show would have made no sense. And so the fact that we have people going, aha, I know from that point from the previous thing, I'm getting it. I'm on the ride and I'm emotional to this detail. That feels like we've won.
Got it.
Regardless of in this stacked season of crazy word of mouth for a lot of things. Like, even in a vacuum, I just think, regardless of anything, we did our job.
I think that goes back to Will and Hue too. They've accomplished something, and this is not just to be another actor
that's
exalting
the lyricist
the
and composer.
Yes, the lyricist. There's a seamlessness to this show that is not an accident. It's very rare that you have a sort of 360 auteur vibe about these shows, and that's not to trivialize or to knock any shows that don't.
No, for sure,
it takes a village, and so very rarely do you have people that kind of do all the things. And Will and Hue have done the story, have done the book, have done the music, have done the lyrics, and in the case of Will Aronson, the orchestrations and the arrangement. So the seamlessness that you feel is not an accident. It is by way of this singular vision having been very well curated by a very small group of people. And there is something that I value as somebody that sees probably way too much theater, is I feel taken care of as an audience member. I mean, I haven't watched the show as many as some other people, but even reading it, I feel respected as an audience member, that I feel like, okay, they've treated me with an invitation, with care. I am a very well looked after house guest in this world because you've explained to me the rules of the road. You have the signage up. You've delighted me with some beautiful ideas. And by the time that there are payoffs, either emotionally or intellectually, I don't feel disrespected or pandered to. And that is a testament to their very well considered storytelling. And it's just up to Helen and I and our other two cast members, Des and Marcus, to abide by what they've set out for us. And so being a part of that, to kind of go back to how we have felt about the reception of the show, has been extraordinarily comforting and encouraging, because we felt this way about the show before other people did. Not to say that we're ahead of the game, but doing this, being a part of the show, has been just a polite reminder of the no loss game of what it is to follow your heart. We did this because we thought it was beautiful. I mean, not for nothing, we're actors, and so we'll take what we can get. But it also helps. It's also very helpful when you genuinely love something, or genuinely moved by it, and you think it is beautiful. And that's not always part of the contract that you get, being a gun for hire actor, moving from gig to gig to gig, and hoping to just pay the bills with this absurd life choice that you've decided to make a career. Like, doing something that you love is not always the case. And before we opened, our one of our conductors and our musical director, John Yoon, said something wonderful, where we're all holding hands, as we all kind of do before a rehearsal or before performing. This is something that Michael does, where we all talk together. He said something that really stayed with me, which is, guys, I feel impenetrable. He used the word impenetrable because we all felt so connected to the piece. We all thought it was unique and special and beautiful, that regardless of whatever other people may or may not think in the future outside of our little circle, I felt good. And God forbid it didn't really catch on. 10, 20 years from now, I would have said, oh, I did this really amazing thing 20 years ago. Maybe there's a recording. I think it's so beautiful. You would love it. I think it was really special. And then I still would have been happy with it, because I got to be a part of something that was beautiful. So other people outside of our world, after opening night, Michael Arden said this to us. He said, guys, just remember, we believed in this before other people told us we should. And that was, it was nice to be, not that we needed validation, but it's nice to be co-signed by other people who aren't in your own head, in your own immediate circle of friends and family, who also are being captivated and falling in love with something that you did. Because then you go, great, at large, our society, we can get behind this too. I'm not fucking crazy. Right. This is objectively beautiful, and I'm so glad other people feel that way.
Yeah. That's great. And we have to remind ourselves and the audience that there are only 4 actors in this show, and the other 2, Marcus Choi, who plays James and other characters, and Des Duron,
Dreamboat Des,
who seems to be a filtered out of Oliver's imagination, in the sense that it's he's got this encyclopedic knowledge of 20th century music, jazz and bebop and all those things, and he appears on one of the many hydraulics that seem to be all over the stage to sing these quasi standards that are really obviously written by Aronson and Hue,
Hue Park.
Yes.
Hue, is that how you say it?
Hue Park, yes.
Hue Park.
Aronson
it's
Park.
H-U-E.
Park and Aronson.
Park and Aronson sounds good. And they sort of subtly comment on what's happening to in ways to Oliver and Claire even. So there is that seamlessness that you're describing, permeates parts of the show for me, that add to that idea that why it flows one thing into the other.
Peter, it's Greek. It's a Greek chorus. This is, again, it's ancient storytelling. It's like it's the third party omniscient commentator.
I took classics at Yale. I know.
Yeah, you know.
No. But anyway, no. But wait. But I want to ask. So backstage, do you two have time I just, some shows have green rooms where you sit and you take a Diet Coke and for the next number. Do you meet backstage ever?
No.
Are you on tracks that are so solitary until you're on stage together that you really don't have time to go, hey, that really worked tonight? Or
yeah, we no, there's no time to pee.
Yeah,
Peter. There's no time to there's barely time to get water.
Wow.
And I mean, for me, I feel like it makes our onstage time that much more real to start at a place of such polarization, and then to meet our only time of connection, at least in the world of the show. We have our little check-ins before and after, but during the show, the only time that we can connect is on stage.
Yeah, there's maybe about a fleeting totality of 4 seconds, and that's way more than I think is actually there. We'll have passing moments where I will want to say something, usually complimentary, or more often than not, something that will be stupid and make her laugh. But I can't. And that leaves for the only energy that we can continue to connect on is only in the ring, which is fun.
Mm-hmm. It's so rare to have a musical where there's absolutely no fat too. As you say, it's like an hour and a half. It's very contained. I really think of it constantly about it's this bubble that is completely out of the usual musical style. I don't want to even say Broadway style because Broadway can be so many things.
Yes.
It's just I really think it's changed tremendously. But even in that context, it feels still like this kind of just this awake dream.
I think this piece, at least as far as musical theater is concerned, it is accomplishing. I think it's and I'm careful here because I'm not flattering ourselves. This is me as objective as I can possibly sound from somebody that sees, again, way too much theater. When I encountered this, I said this before I was ever in the shoes and body of Oliver. When I watched it, I was like, this is my favorite version of what musical theater can be at its highest. And I said this when I just was reading the script and watching bits from the Alliance Theater production. It just accomplished so many things that really takes advantage of what this form is. And there are a lot of pieces that, have use it to its advantages, or maybe has perhaps a misguided sense of what it could be used as, and that this all comes down to taste and whatever. I won't get into other shows that may or may not sort of accomplish this, but there are things about this where I'm so pleased with the fact that that's your takeaway, that you said you're like, Broadway can be many things. This is so distinctly a Broadway musical, but also so distinctly not. And that's the line that the show rides. I think an overarching thing that delights me about this show is it rides that very difficult line that if we all knew how to walk and create, we'd be manufacturing hits every day. But it's not. That alchemy is very difficult to ride the line between being completely accessible, but also sophisticated and new and elegant, and it feels familiar but new. It's nostalgic but contemporary, and it walks that line so well, because you can know everything about Broadway shows and come here and feel like there's enough there that satiates that itch and that desire, but enough newness to get you interested in what might be next. And you can know nothing about theater and don't need to know anything about theater or what has come before or what is to come, and still have that experience, and that is just such a gift.
Well, one of the things that makes it, I've been listening even to some of the Korean cuts of the show, and, it's very moving to me to think, if we want to think about musical theater as a global export from the United States, this is actually an import, half imported, I guess. I mean, the hybrid quality of the writing team culturally is really interesting. That sort of is an overlay for me of how, the moving part of this show feels like it can work universally. It could work in almost any culture, I really believe. I do have one question. I got to stop obsessing about this show because it's really not healthy. But so the year is 2069, you said?
2064.
2064. I don't think. But so, all right. And you're both running out of battery power. You know, there's a limit. In 2064, you're telling me that there's not a bootleg industry of parts for 3s and 5s that you can find replacements, or
the tariffs made it too hard, man.
Supply chain.
Oh my God! The
supply chain issue.
I didn't realize you guys even anticipated that.
Yeah, it gets real murky, man.
The domino effect.
Yeah, it's the echoes of history.
Oh God,
they're really tough.
We should let you go and have a bit of rest before on a show day. But I think I would just like to ask to wrap up. Like, what do you feel like towards the character? Like, is it you've been doing the show for like 6 months now?
Yeah, we just crossed the 200 performance threshold.
Yes.
Oh, this is great. So what do you feel about the character specifically? Like, what are they to you now after 6 months playing them? Has that changed, or is it?
I'm constantly finding new things, but you know, but what's great about, listen, it's an age-old thing. I tend to lean on the classics here. The play's the thing. The play's the thing. The play's the thing. I'm very careful of the intoxicating thrill of finding too many new things, because at the end of the day,
that's interesting.
The things that I constantly am reminded of is where we started and what we have on the page and what has been instilled since day one. More often than not always, but more often than not, will be the strongest choice and the strongest idea. It has made it this far that if I start doing, too far of a degree of nuance, when you just sing the notes, it's amazing how well that works out. I forget if it's one of the I follow a lot of music and jazz nerd stuff, not too dissimilar from Oliver, but my algorithm, there's a meme that pops up a lot, and I forget the name of the professor. He's a very renowned jazz guy, but he's the sort of thesis of what he's saying, and the reason why this gets passed around a lot is he's kind of admonishing a student about over reharmonizing a Gershwin song. And he's just saying, like, George Gershwin doesn't need your ass to be hit. George Gershwin is fucking hit. Play the notes. And what I love about that idea is just that there is something there that is so special that if you can stick to the roadmap, like all the great plays and all the great pieces of music, when Ella or Bobby Darin or anybody or Des Duron is singing a standard, if they're singing Gershwin, yes, you can kind of take liberties here and there because at the end of the day, your contribution makes it unique. But singing the notes, singing the tune for people that have never heard the song or are very familiar with the song will be the thing that really takes it to the emotional place that it was designed to go to from the very beginning. So after I crossed 200, I have found myself hearkening back to, like, where do we start? The most notes that I will get from Michael, which I invite, Michael Arden, our director, usually are like, don't forget A, B, and C. Remember, this is where we started. And so, there's something very maybe happy ending about kind of going back to from whence you came that I keep finding. And the most things that I find are more of a rediscovery than they are a new place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's great. Helen, how do you feel about that?
I am a fundamentally different person from the first time I encountered Claire. I think I initially fell in love with her realism and the peace that brought her and the kind of release that gives of the start of her journey and opening up. I feel like a more confident person. I feel like a more embodied person, a more flawed person, which I think is wisdom showing a little bit of, like, I know so little and I have so much more to learn. And I think that's what Claire has taught me for sure. And I feel the same way about letting the piece be the piece. I believe in it so hard, and I feel so inspired by the creators and the creative team on this, and just after 200 want to honor the beautiful thing that we made 6 months ago, and how people have received the piece. Also, I feel bolstered by folks at the stage door that I've met who are inspired by this piece even existing. So I just feel very humbled and grateful. So.
Well, that's, you have a line in Claire's song about, who says endings have to be sad. Or, there's this wonderful sentiment about life. And I feel sad that this is ending, but it's been really.
Did they teach you about transitions at Yale? Is that what they did?
Yeah, I think that.
Excuse
that was his
me.
final semester before they kicked him out. They said, we're going to transition.
Me. That's insulting to, bulldogs everywhere. How dare you?
No.
Wow. Anyway, you killed my beautiful segue, Elizabeth. And I just want to thank Helen and Darren. This has been so much fun. I could I seriously could sit and drink with you guys for 2 hours and ask you more questions. And really,
the ending's not the most important part, Peter. We'll do this another time. Good transition or not, you'll say hi and shake its hand.
Oh man.
God.
Oh man. All right. Well, we'll have to do this 4 more times. That's all. That's all.
Be an honor. It's lovely talking to you guys.
So
Thank you so
lovely.
much.
You too.
Thank you so much.
You too, guys.
Thank you. Oh my God, there was another one. Listen, I'm going to say that everybody should be so lucky as to get Darren, Criss, and Helen Shen on a podcast or TV show or whatever. They should have their own talk show. These two, in fact.
Yeah. I thought they would be great giving a maybe happy ending tutorial, at some point on their day off. But this was a happy ending for this episode, no doubt.
That's right. Okay, well, that's it for us today. We hope you enjoyed listening. We try to make it fun. And you learn things, but it's not spinach, although I actually do like spinach. And I mean that literally and metaphorically.
I like it with a side of risotto balls.
Okay, deep cut. Okay, references for the listeners who are paying attention. Deep cut from Mr. Marks here. We've been talking about these risotto balls for a little while, and we still have to go get some together. So I'm feeling bowled out. I'm bowled out on the balls.
David Rockwell, the set designer, has invited us to have risotto balls with him. Anyway, I'm sorry, I'm getting silly.
If anybody ever runs into me on 42nd Street and they say risotto balls like now, I would be like, absolutely. Let's do it. Let's live in the moment. And eat them. Inject them into my veins. Okay, well, but you know what? Hey, I have to pay for those risotto balls, so please subscribe. Subscribe. This is a naked plea. These risotto balls they're not going to land in my plate on their own. Someone has to buy them, and it should be you, the paying subscriber. This is going to be the worst. Although if they decide to sponsor us, if the West Bank Cafe decides suddenly,
there's no manufacturer of risotto balls.
There's the West Bank Cafe. That's where they make them. Come on. You know that.
All right. Tell them what our handle is.
Oh, my God. It's marksvincentielli.substack.com.
You'll
so
find us there on social media.
There's no clever name.
Threads.
It's just our names. That's it.
We haven't had anything to drink. I swear to God. Find us there on social media.
You know what? I am drunk on Criss juice. Criss and Shen juice. That is, it completely went to...
I'm on Threads, Blue Sky, and Facebook. Elizabeth hangs out on Blue Sky.
Yeah, mostly that's right.
And both of us under our own names.
This could be a very big mistake. But we're back soon with another great guests. I don't know. I'm going to let it just... this pregnant mystery, ellipsis, because seriously, we are going to... It's going to such a lineup.
I know.
For
it's
peak
really good.
Broadway season.
It's really good.
Yeah. I'm excited.
So we'll be here. We hope you will be. And until then,